Hi, I'm Wright Thurston, and in this video program, the world's 30 best high-income closing techniques, we're going to be discussing ideas and principles used by the top salespeople and businesses worldwide. These methods, if properly applied, will allow you to enjoy a much higher standard of living for you and your family. I know from my own personal experience how powerful these techniques are. By using these same principles in business activities in Italy, England, Australia, Hong Kong, and throughout the United States, I've enjoyed tremendous success in 3 completely different areas: sales and marketing, financial investments, and public speaking. Now, the exciting message I have for you today is that by mastering these 30 closing techniques, you can start generating more monthly income immediately. I know you can because there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people across this world that are doing these same things right now. They're doing them successfully and they're earning more money than they've ever dreamed of. Besides earning more income, they're gaining some of the best benefits of all. They're having more time, more freedom, and more financial security in their personal lives. You would not be watching this video unless you were serious about being more successful. As we review these powerful closing techniques, please remember that only when you're helping other people get what they want will you achieve a rewarding and long-lasting success. I want you to realize that right now, today, whether or not you're using these principles, other people are using these principles on you. Being more familiar with these ideas will help you make more money in just about everything you do. It's been said that in order to be a successful salesperson, you must do all the things that the average salesperson won't do. Successful salespeople know how to close the business. If you take the word close and the letters C-L-O-S-E and remove the first letter, you now have the word lose. The C in the word close can represent many positive attributes, such as confidence, courage, compassion, and control. By not having these characteristics and by not closing when you're in front of the customer, all parties are losing. You're losing the opportunity to give your clients something that would help them. You might also be losing their business in the future and losing their confidence. If they're not buying your products, you're also losing them to the competition. And finally, you're losing any benefits you might have gained in getting them involved in something they needed. It's essential to believe in what you're selling. You must believe 100% in what you're offering if you're going to be successful. You must be so genuinely convinced of the worth and benefits of your products that you'll feel your customers are the ones that lose if they don't take advantage of it. This is the essence of successful selling. Let's now begin our review of the world's 30 best high-income closing techniques. Closing technique number 1 is what I call the Mrs. Fields cookie close. Debbie Fields' success in the business world was a result of how well she got her clients to participate with her product. During the hectic noon lunchtime hour, Debbie would stand at the busiest street corner passing out cookies to the hungry business people on their way to lunch. Since she was offering her tasty cookies at the right time and at the right place, she created a huge demand and a multi-million-dollar worldwide business. One of the best salespeople I've ever known got his start by selling shoes. He told me initially he wasn't having much success, so he asked the most experienced person working there the secret of selling shoes. Listen to this simple response. The person told him, "You've got to put the shoe on their foot." Ladies and gentlemen, there is no substitution, even if you create and paint the best visual and mental picture in the world, for having someone come in and actually see what you're demonstrating. By showing them your product, by making them participate with you and touch it, the demonstration close is extremely powerful. People in sales and marketing make their living with their words, and one demonstration is worth 1,000 words. So the next time your prospect isn't convinced by your eloquence, put the shoe on their foot and get them involved. The closing strategy that I'd like to discuss next is the visualization or story close. Whenever I hear a well-told story, I think of this close. It's been said that painting a picture of the future can help all salespeople to close more orders. We should strive to create mental pictures during our sales presentations. We should use words and expressions that actually put in our customers' minds pictures of themselves using, enjoying, and benefiting from the things you're offering. The more that you can help them see themselves taking advantage and benefiting from your product, the closer you are to getting your prospect to buy. There is only one easy way to close an order, and that is to make the sales story so perfect that the order will close itself. It's always a good idea also to mingle in with your presentation interesting stories and appropriate humor. things that can entertain and take the customer's mind off the fact that you're trying to sell them something. The more relaxed you can help them to be, the more successful you'll be in getting the order. The nice thing about the visualization or story close is that you can adjust it to the personality and the interest of the person or the group you're dealing with. It's also a close that doesn't require an aggressive attitude. In fact, it's considered a low-pressure method of selling. That's why it's such an effective technique to master. In my property management presentation, I talk about an incident where an irate tenant once pulled out a gun and started waving it around. As a direct result of this experience, I made the decision to employ the services of an assistant manager who was actually a big, burly bouncer type of guy named Igor. Now, I've told this story to thousands of people, and they really enjoy it. And as I tell the story, they're able to understand exactly what is happening. Most people say they can easily identify with my dilemma. So if you're successful in being able to make your prospect feel part of your story, if you're able to get them to identify with the situation and with some of the personalities involved, your chances of leading them to a successful conclusion are excellent. The third closing technique I refer to as the return serve or ping pong close. Once while shopping, I asked a sales clerk, "What price would you give me on this particular food item?" And this clerk inadvertently used a tremendous closing technique on me. She answered my question with another question. And she did it in such a way that by answering her question, I was practically making a commitment to buy the food. In effect, she said, "How much did you want to buy? In what quantity?" So I turned her question around and asked, "What would I have to buy in order to get a really good price?" And she countered me by saying, "Well, what size order did you have in mind? How much did you want to get?" And we started smiling and going back and forth, and within just a few minutes, she reduced the price by 25%. Just as in tennis or in ping pong, the longer you're able to keep the ball in play, the better your chances are that the person you're playing with will make a mistake. So whenever possible, answer a question with a question. As in most negotiations, the person who speaks or makes the first offer usually weakens their position. Let's take a moment now and review the first three closing techniques. Closing technique number 1 is the Mrs. Fields cookie close or the demonstration close. Number 2 is the visualization or story close. And closing technique number 3 is the return serve or ping pong close. Closing technique number 4 is what I call the refusal close. One of the most exciting and rewarding sales closings I ever had took place in a remote city in my sales territory. In fact, I earned $10,000 in one day as a result of what I'm about to share with you. Now, of course, this was nearly 10 years ago when $10,000 was still real money. For years, I had wanted to sell some of IBM's high-performance copiers to a particular location. But due to the distances involved, the frequent electrical power outages, and the cost of service, IBM had really resisted in letting me market this product. They only wanted me to market copiers that were virtually maintenance-free and easy for our customers to maintain. But I knew in the back of my mind that someday, given the right conditions, I'd be permitted to market these machines in this city. As a result, I was constantly using what is known as the refusal close with my clients and prospects. During my sales trips, I would show them brochures of these high-performance copiers that explained the numerous features, functions, and benefits. And the enhancements on these new machines were so vastly superior to our older models that my customers would get very excited. And as they got excited, I'd say, "But unfortunately, we're not able to market this product here at this time." And they'd want to know why not, and who could they call? And just the fact that they weren't able to get it made them want it even more. I remember at the end of a particular year, in fact, it was the first week in December, I looked at my quota situation, and I needed a record-breaking month in order to achieve my yearly sales quota. Fortunately, I had been documenting the potential and the progress in this city, so I was prepared to sit down with my manager and discuss the possibilities. And I said to him, "Dick, I think now's the time to do it. I think I've created enough need and desire by using the refusal close over and over again that these people will not only want the copiers, but I feel they'll pay cash for the copiers." Now, ladies and gentlemen, as many of you in sales know, anything purchased is always better than something leased. With leased equipment, you always had the possibility of it eventually being canceled, returned, or replaced for something else. As we used to say, "Okay, back up the truck." Of course, once the customer pays for it, they owned it. And of course, IBM would always provide the service on a regular basis, but it just limited our future liability as salespeople. Well, based on my documentation, Dick turned to me and said, "Okay, Wright, let's go for it." And at that point, I had 3 weeks left in the year to sell 25% or 3 months of my yearly quota. Yes, I was excited and grateful to have the opportunity, but rather than rushing right up there to the city and saying to everyone, "Okay, we can finally sell this to you, let's sign here," instead, once I arrived, I sat down and calmly showed them testimonial letters from other satisfied customers. And once again, I would create in their minds this feeling of, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could have this machine here to use? And at that particular moment, I'd say, if I was in a position to be able to get one of these machines for you, would you be willing to take one and place an order immediately? And you know, every major customer in that city placed an order, and almost everyone paid cash. That particular month, I sold nearly 1,400% of my copier quota. That was nearly 17 months of quota that was sold in a single day. It was a great way to end the year. Big paycheck, lots of recognition, and I think for one brief shining moment, I probably led the entire world in copier sales. I want to emphasize here, however, that I never would have been able to accomplish this without the support of both management and customer engineering, the servicing people. In other words, it was a total team effort. What made this moment so satisfying is that I know to a great extent the results I achieved were helped by my understanding and using not only the refusal close, but also many of the other closes that we're reviewing in this video. Closing technique number 5 is what we refer to as the reduce to the ridiculous close. One of the most frequently used objections for not buying is the price. One close that works very well with any objection to the cost of a product is what's known as the reduce to the ridiculous close. In this powerful close, you take the price that's involved and you break it down into a very tiny fraction of the initial price. In effect, what you're saying is, do you realize that for just pennies a day you can take advantage of this? Or for simply making a commitment to your business of an additional $1 a day, you can be enjoying all of these benefits as well as an increase in productivity. When utilized properly, this close helps your customer to momentarily forget that your product may cost thousands of dollars because you've broken it down to such a small component. It's much easier to understand an investment that costs less than a cup of coffee a day. As a result, they accept the smaller amount. They're thinking to themselves, hey, that's not too much of a commitment, and then you've accomplished your main objective. You've minimized the concern in their mind. Closing strategy number 6 is what I call the physical action close. Have you ever been shopping in a store or been at a presentation and you could see a crowd of people around a table anxiously looking or listening to something that's going on, and as you get closer to see the people reaching for the product and the supply of that product is getting less and less as they grab for it, and all of a sudden someone thrusts in your hands or gives you one of the items that's in such demand, and this is known as the physical action close. Now, you don't even need to be handed something. If you're sitting in your home or your office and a person is trying to talk to you about something they want you to buy, and if they're just sitting there filling out the order or the contract, it's necessary for you to do something physical like saying no or stop filling that thing out. Because if you don't, what you're doing in effect is committing yourself more and more as time goes by. And unless you take or make some physical action shortly, you're probably going to end up purchasing whatever it is they have to sell. Let's take a moment now and review these past 3 closing techniques. Closing technique number 4 is the refusal close. Technique number 5 is the reduce to the ridiculous close. And finally, closing technique number 6 is the physical action close. Closing technique number 7. Any of you that travel as part of your work have probably experienced at least one time when your suitcase or your product did not arrive at the same time you did. In fact, I heard someone say at a ticket counter recently, "Hey, I'd like to buy a ticket to wherever my bags are going." In the event that your materials or products are ever delayed or don't make it on time, then you're in an excellent position to use what's known as the limited supply close. This close can also be used when you have a meeting room that's packed full of people. And based on the normal percentages that people buy, there's no way in the world that you have enough product for everyone there. This is also known as the SRO, or standing room only close. You simply indicate towards the end of your presentation, folks, I'm sorry, But due to some delays beyond my control with the freight company or whoever it is that's responsible for the delay, all of my materials did not arrive. Now, due to the number of people we have here, there's not going to be enough material for all of you serious buyers. But I want you to know that I will make this offer available as long as these materials are here. You're creating a sense of urgency. You're making people realize, wow, I better act immediately or I'm going to miss out on this special offering or opportunity. And since they don't want to back order the product or have it sent to them later in the mail, they'll usually move very quickly towards the back of the room to take advantage of your offer. The next closing strategy that we'll discuss is called the unique feature close. Successful salespeople stress benefits, not the features or functions. Show your customers how it's going to be beneficial to them. Tell them what they want to hear, not what you think they want to hear. Now, IBM has such a diverse product line with so many excellent features that I had to constantly remind myself not to only sell the features and functions, but more importantly, to sell the benefits as well. In selling the benefits and demonstrating the equipment, there was often one particular feature, the unique feature that would really zero in on it. You could see your customers' eyes light up and you could see that they were excited. And this was their hot button. This was the thing that made them really want to buy what you were selling. And if you weren't listening or if you weren't watching, you might not realize which area you should continually reinforce. Learn to close when the proper signals are given. Don't wait. If the opportunity presents itself early in the presentation, if you find your customer's hot button early on, after you hit the hot button, then go for it. Give them a trial close. Try to get that order signed right then and there. And if you sell or market in a remote area, service, for example, might be the unique feature. Not all companies will provide service in all areas. So if you can offer some benefit that your competitors can't, that's unique. Service is something that people want to rely on. They want to know that when they buy something, it's going to be serviced and that it's going to have some kind of warranty. If you'll just keep stressing to them, yes, believe me, if there's any concern, we're going to take care of it. And keep reinforcing that unique feature. Keep bringing it up. Don't let them forget about it. That's the hot button. That's the key point. And by going back to it over and over again, that element will close the order for you. Looking back at my experiences, there are several other closes that, depending on the situation, can be extremely effective. One technique I can remember using, especially after new product announcements, is called the cancel order close. I would make my customers and my prospects aware of any new products that had just been recently announced. We go through all of the features and functions and benefits, and after answering their questions, listening, qualifying their objections, if for any reason they felt it wasn't the proper time, and if I knew it wasn't the proper time, I'd always try this one last close. What I would do is ask them to write across my order form the word cancel, and then I'd ask them to initial it or sign it. Or better yet, I'd ask them to write the words information received, not interested at this time on the contract, and then initial it. If they ever asked me why, I'd say, well, management wants everyone to be aware that because of the initial demand when new products come out, delivery schedules, although they may only be a few weeks right now, may be pushed back 4 or 5 months. And ladies and gentlemen, this was a very realistic and accurate prediction to make based on past experiences. That way I could also tell them, we'd like to have something in our files that indicates that you received this information and that after considering it, you decided not to place an order. Then we know you won't be concerned later on when you decide to buy it and you find out you'll have to wait for a long period of time. It's been said that no one likes to put in writing that their judgment may be wrong. Let's take a moment and go over these last 3 closing techniques. Closing technique number 7 is the limited supply or standing room only close. Closing technique number 8 is the unique feature close. And technique number 9 is the cancel order close. Closing technique number 10. Several years ago, the movie industry released a film called Trading Places. It was about a successful commodities broker who was forced to trade places with an underprivileged ghetto person. Now, in the film, it was amazing to see how differently people were treated based on their lifestyles or the positions they held. And the Trading Places close is most effective when you've answered all the customers' objections that have been made known to you, but you feel there's one outstanding objection upon which the sale hinges. So ask the customer to trade places and to put themselves in your position. How would they respond if they were you? And then as they put themselves in your shoes and try to see it through your eyes, through your perspective, they'll normally reveal to you what their primary concern is by simply saying, "What else could I do, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer? Would you please help me out? Would you please put yourself in my position? How would you respond to what you just asked me?" By using this trading places clause, you'll be able to find out their main objection, and then you can handle it accordingly. Strategy 11. The next technique is referred to as the sharp angle clause, or the would you if you could clause. It's great for those situations where someone asks you about your products. Can it do this? Can it do that? Why won't it do that? And you can sharp angle them by saying, "Do you want it if it does?" And if the prospect asks you a question to which the answer would normally be a yes or a no, such as, "Can I order it in blue?" your best response would be, "Would you like to order it in blue?" By the same token, if someone says, "I think I may be needing something like this in a couple of weeks," turn it around and say to them, "If I can get this to you within the next couple of weeks, would you like to place an order now?" Always take advantage of those situations and turn them around to a buying opportunity. One method frequently used by advertisers is the fear of penalty clause. The best example that comes to mind is the advertisement on television that many of you have seen for Michelin tires. In the background, you hear the voices of a husband and wife discussing whether or not they should get new tires for her car. Now, the whole time this conversation is going on, their young baby is playing with this particular tire. And as the father is trying to think of all the reasons why he can't really afford to get new tires, he then realizes, as we all do by visually seeing this picture, that the most important reason of all for buying these tires is the safety and protection of his wife and children. This is his primary concern. And his fear of losing that which is most precious to him causes him to act and make the buying decision. To give you another example of this, you may happen to live in a part of the country where burglary seems to be increasing according to the statistics. Obviously, anyone selling home security devices that would make your house more secure is going to have a definite advantage. By simply projecting what might happen if they don't have this equipment, it causes you to think, "Wow, do I really want to take the chance?" Again, your concern of loss or your concern of not having something happen to you by not having this product causes you to buy. You may have prospects who hesitate to buy now unless they feel that a postponement of their buying decision will cause them to suffer some kind of a loss. It's this fear of loss that's such a strong motivating force. This clause will encourage your prospect to get involved and to buy what you're selling now instead of waiting and postponing it and putting it off till later. Used under correct conditions, this is an extremely powerful clause and one that will give you tremendous leverage. Again, I want to issue a word of caution. It's very important that you stick to the facts and that you're always completely upfront and honest with the customer. Because if they ever find out that you've overstated or misrepresented any of the things you've said, you'll probably not only have your order canceled, but you'll never do business with these folks again. Your credibility with them will be non-existent. Let me share some examples of some of the reasons that would cause people to make a decision now instead of later. As a salesperson, I never knew when IBM was going to raise prices. Normally, we found out about price increases the same day the rest of the world did. Usually, any price change would be a price increase. So by subtly referring to this when you were with the customer like, "Mr. or Mrs. Customer, we just want to make absolutely sure that we lock you in at this monthly lease price for the next 2 years in order to maximize your savings on this," they would think, "Hey, maybe the price is going up, and if that's the case, I'll have to pay more for it later if I wait." This thinking causes them, because of the impending event or the event they think is going to happen, to go ahead and act now. Let's take a moment and go over these last 3 closing techniques. Closing strategy number 10 is the trading places clause. Number 11 is the sharp angle clause, or would you if you could clause. And strategy number 12 is the fear or penalty clause. Most buyers, purchasing agents, and controllers are used to salespeople coming in. Most salespeople, if they're professional at all, will get excited and enthusiastic about their product. This is a very important point. You always want to be enthusiastic about your product. But the next time you find yourself talking louder in an excited way, try using the whisper clause. At the moment you really want them to commit, lower your voice a little bit and quietly ask them to commit to the order. It's amazing. I mean, when you're listening to someone speak who has been talking in a strong, continuous voice and suddenly they lower their voice, doesn't that catch your attention? Don't you suddenly lean forward and strain to hear what they're saying? And you know, if you're not careful, before you know it, you've agreed with them. You've committed yourself, and you've done exactly what the seller hoped you'd do when they used the whisper close. Closing technique 14 is one of my personal favorites, and it's known as the testimonial or verbal proof story close. Here the salesperson shares a story or an example of someone else who has received tremendous benefits, such as increased productivity, dollar savings, more happiness among their employees, etc., as a result of using your particular product. I have found that having a testimonial, someone stand up in person that can either share with the audience something they have done, is much more effective than anything else you could ever do or say yourself. Now you have a satisfied customer saying, yes, it not only works for me, but it will work for you if you'll simply go out and take advantage of it. Closing technique number 15. In an informal survey that was made of salespeople who sold specialized items, the results indicated that 74% of the time, the salespeople used the alternate close. Now, another name for this is the either-or close. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is probably the most popular close of all, and the reason it's popular is because it works. And when something works, people use it. Now, as the name implies, what you're doing is giving your customer or prospect two different choices, both of which are very positive, and either response commits the customer towards what you're offering. For example, the other morning, my wife woke me up with a love and a hug, and she said, honey, would you like to spend the day cleaning the garage or taking me shopping? Now, what kind of a choice was that? Or my children come into my office and say, Dad, would you like to go play some basketball or take us to the movies? Or you're down talking to a sales clerk, and they say, would you like to charge it or pay by check? In each example, they're giving me a choice, and either choice is beneficial to people that are asking. Another example would be when I was selling IBM Office products. I would ask at the end of the presentation, would you like your machine in either red or blue? Now, either response is a yes response. You might ask, would you like 2 or 3 of these machines for your office, when maybe you were hoping and be happy just to have one? Or have you ever been in a store and you're trying to make up your mind between items, and as I mentioned a moment ago, the clerk will casually come up and say, would you like to pay cash or put this on your credit card? Again, what they're doing is offering you two different choices, and in effect what they're saying is, which one do you prefer? They're not giving you an opportunity to say no. They're asking you to decide on two choices, both of which are positive for you as the person selling. I'm sure you can see why this is such a popular sales closing technique. Let's take a moment now and review the last 3 techniques we've just covered. Closing strategy number 13 is the whisper close. Strategy 14 is the testimonial or verbal proof story close. And finally, closing strategy number 15 is the alternative or either-or close. Probably the easiest way to get fired from IBM or Big Blue is to say something negative or disparaging about your competition. It was drilled into us from day one that we sold on our own merits, based on our own efforts, and because we had the best product. We didn't sell the fact that we were the biggest, we sold the fact that we were the best. There will be many occasions when you'll have to bite your tongue because you'll hear information from your customer that you know is incorrect, that maybe some competitor has given them. You may also hear your competitors make misleading statements that you know they never could substantiate. But the best way to handle this when it occurs is to always say something complimentary to your customer about your competitor. Say something positive if you know something positive to say. Then help them come to a positive decision by using this next close, which is best known as the Ben Franklin close. The other 2 names that this goes by are the balance sheet approach and the weighing scale close. As the name implies from the balance sheet approach, what you're doing is you're taking a piece of paper and you're drawing a line down the middle of it. On one side, you're putting a plus sign, and on the other side, you're putting a negative sign. And then you basically say to your customer, let's go ahead and do what good old Ben Franklin used to do. Let's look at all the positive reasons, and then let's look at some of the reasons that you might be concerned. And then you help your customer to list all of the positive aspects that you both can think of. Now notice that I emphasize the phrase both of you. Make sure that you as a salesperson know at least 10 good benefits. Now you've probably all seen pictures of the old-time weighing scales where the prospector would put their gold on one side, and then on the other side they'd put the weights until things balanced out. Well, hopefully your sales presentation will be so golden that it will always outweigh any of the concerns or objections that your customers might have. For that very reason, do not, let me repeat that, do not assist your customer in listing any concerns they might have when you're using this Ben Franklin close. Let them do it all by themselves, because now you'll have 10 to 15 positive or benefits of your equipment, and rarely will the customer ever be able to list more than 3 or 4 of their own. In fact, the positives will normally so outweigh the negatives that this is a very powerful technique for getting people to decide for themselves by their own participation that what you're offering is definitely in their best interest. Strategy number 17. In the assumptive close, you as the person doing the selling are taking a very positive position. And as a result of a strong presentation you're given, you're absolutely convinced in your mind that the customer is going to buy. For that very reason, you convey the fact to them that you assume they will buy. In fact, your confidence level is so high that you'll make statements like, will you be wanting this machine in this room or the other room? How many supplies or ribbons will you want with your equipment? Will your machine, and notice I stress the word your here, be for the administrative or the marketing area? Now, just a word of caution on the assumptive close. As some of these closes will become second nature to you, you'll find yourself using them all the time in everyday situations. And if you ever encounter someone else who has the same skills in selling as you do, this can be very obnoxious to them, especially if it's not handled properly. One time I was trying to convince a contractor friend of mine to build some apartment buildings for me. And during our preliminary discussions, I would always refer to it as our project and our building and when we get started. And at a certain point in time, he looked at me and he said, Wright, don't say us and we until I've actually decided to build it. So always watch and be careful. In the majority of cases, most people will not recognize these closing techniques if you handle them skillfully. The assumptive close has many variations and can be applied in many different ways. I found it to be most effective in group presentations or in front of large audiences. Now, you should always strive to customize your presentations to make them as beneficial as possible to the people listening. Again, you assume from the very beginning that the people you're dealing with are your partners and that you'll both be acting together in the buying decision. I'll offer some kind of phone number or consulting service to all the people in the audience who make a buying decision on my product. And talking about this future partnership in terms of we, are, and us, I'm getting them to think of us as a team. If a consulting service or a support system is important to them, then they're more likely to get involved. Strategy number 18. One of my colleagues jokingly refers to my personal close as the kitchen sink close. As the name implies, in this close, you offer just about everything but the kitchen sink. I've spoken with people who have tremendous information and excellent products, and they found that it helps their sales tremendously if instead of initially listing all of the products that they have available, they'll just describe 3 or 4 of them. Then they say to the audience, if you'll act now and make a buying decision on these 4 items, I'm going to include these other 9 or 10 items for free. And then they go down and list them, and the audience goes crazy. This helps create a much higher perceived value. Your audience is thinking, wow, I'm going to get 9 or 10 extra items simply by going back now and making a buying decision. By throwing in everything but the kitchen sink and creating such a value, you're making it very difficult for your customer to walk away from such an attractive offer. Let's now go back and take a look at these last 3 closing techniques. Closing strategy technique number 16 is the Ben Franklin close. This is also known as the balance sheet approach or the weighing scale close. Closing strategy 17 is the assumptive close, and closing strategy 18 is the kitchen sink close. Closing technique number 19. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask you several questions for just a moment. Would you like to have more income each month? Would you like to be able to generate this additional income without working extra hours? Would you like to learn the principles that will enable you to earn 200%, 300%, and even 400% more than you're currently earning? Would you like to be able to increase your income in a win-win way so that everyone involved will benefit? And finally, in addition to having the extra income that you deserve, would you also enjoy having more time, more freedom, and more financial stability for yourself and your loved ones? I tell the story of a real estate transaction where everyone got exactly what they wanted. All the people involved benefited because it was a perfect example of a win-win-win-win situation. And at the end of that example or story, I asked the audience, has the banker gotten what they wanted? And the audience says, yes. Has the real estate agent got what they wanted? The audience says, you bet. Have the buyers gotten the money they've needed? Yes. And then I asked the most important question of all. How many of you would like to buy a piece of property, make everyone happy, and have a positive cash flow? Would that make you happy? And again, they say yes. And the name of this close is the ascending close or the yes close. Now, at the beginning of this particular section, I asked 5 questions about earning more monthly income. And I tried to ask the questions in such a way to get 5 yes responses. When you compose your questions, your leading or directive questions in such a way that your prospects say yes, 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 that helps prepare them. So later on, when you ask them to make a buying decision, they'll say yes. Whenever possible, avoid all negative words and negative expressions. Anything negative in your presentation should be changed so that the same response will be a positive or yes response. Gear it so everything is positive, positive, positive. Closing technique number 20. Many salespeople, especially people who sell automobiles for a living, love the puppy dog close. If your customers are wavering on whether they can afford to buy a new car, encourage them to take it out for a test drive. Often on the test drive, they'll drive home so their families can see the car. And maybe the neighbors will see them as they drive by in this new car. And you know all new cars have that wonderful new car smell inside, and people start thinking about the pride of ownership, and they get excited about owning it maybe when they weren't even going to buy it in the first place. And of course, there are all the external pressures. Their friends think they have a new car, their family is excited about the new car, and deep down inside they really want to get this automobile. So they go ahead and make a buying decision. Of course, the name puppy dog close comes from the fact that any pet dealer that ever wanted to sell you a pet for your home would simply encourage you to take this pet home for the weekend. Because over the course of the weekend, you get attached to the animal, you fall in love with it, and it becomes extremely difficult, nearly impossible, to take the animal back at the end of the week. Closing technique number 21. A very powerful close that I inadvertently used for a while as a new speaker was the emotion close. In the emotion close, you use stories or examples that appeal to other people's senses. This close, if properly used, can cause prospects to act with their hearts and their emotions rather than with their heads. I'm thinking of things like inspirational stories concerning families and children. I'm reminded of the person who, during a sales presentation, took out a long tape measure and asked one of the decision makers of the company, a director, to stand up. And the salesperson first measured the distance from the manager's head to his pocketbook, which was just inside his jacket. And then the salesperson measured the distance from his heart to his pocketbook. And turning to the audience, he said, I hope this demonstration proves something to you. The difference from a prospect's head to his pocketbook is far greater than from his heart to his pocketbook. You'll often buy more items that appeal more to your heart rather than to your head. I used to share the story about my oldest son undergoing surgery. Now, due to some complications, his situation became very serious, and I wondered for many long hours one evening if he was going to live or not. Fortunately, thanks to the help of the doctors and some prayers, he recovered and everything is fine. The point I was trying to make when I told that story is the most important things in life are not money or material things. The most important things in life are your family and loved ones. You can lose everything you have materially, and as long as you have your family, those closest to you, you still have the real wealth of this world. I eventually stopped telling this story because some of the people were getting so emotionally involved that they were never quite able to recover from it. It was very difficult to try to get them excited and motivated again after that point. All of these closes, if used properly, are excellent and very professional, but since I never wanted anyone to think I was using my relationship with my family to sell products, I stopped sharing this story. Obviously, you should also appeal to your customer's sense of logic. A business person wants facts, but never forget also to appeal to their heart. Let's now take a moment and review these last 3 closing techniques. Closing technique number 19 is the ascending or yes close. Number 20 is the puppy dog close, and closing technique number 21 is the emotion close. Closing technique number 22 is the getting approval or the stepladder close. Most salespeople wait too long to begin their closing. They'll give the entire presentation talking about the feature, functions, and benefits and wait until the very end before they start going through these techniques we've been discussing. And they wonder why they're not having more success. I found that it's much better to, throughout your presentation, continually gain agreement by asking questions of your audience. For example, when you finish talking about working with lending institutions, ask the question, how many of you think that knowing how to work with lending institutions will enhance your ability to borrow money? People will raise their hands, they'll nod their head, you've gained their agreement, and you're one more step up on this step-ladder close. Let's say you're talking about management. Ask the question when you're through. How many of you agree that a good management system, whether it's applied to your business or your investments, will help you generate more cash flow? And again, by doing this throughout your presentation, you've gradually gained their agreement. So at the very end, it's not a big, hard sell. It's a gradual, soft sell. And this is why I like the getting approval close. The next closing technique that we're going to be discussing is the invitational close, which is similar in some ways to the puppy dog close that we talked about a few minutes ago. In working in Australia recently, I loved the expression that the Australian people used when they said, "Let's give it a go." In fact, what they're saying is, this invitational close, why don't you go out and give this a try? Why don't you go ahead and use it? Why don't you take this out for a test drive? And by offering your customers the opportunity to prove your product, so to speak, it makes them get closer to this buying decision. AT&T has recently had a telephone commercial that relates to this give it a go principle. In this commercial, the AT&T representative is talking to the customers about switching phone services. They say, hey, we'll pay for the expenses. We'll pay for everything. And within 90 days, if you're not happy, we'll switch you back at no expense. Basically what they're saying is, give it a go. What do you have to lose? And this is a very effective and powerful technique. Closing technique number 24. Another way to increase your income and your sales is to use what's known as the personalized close. I think the best example of this comes from a good friend of mine, Eric Barganier, who lives in Atlanta. Eric has excellent selling skills. And Eric could be talking to someone, answering their questions, and making them aware of some of the products I was offering, and these customers would be right on the edge between making a buying decision or not. And Eric told me that something that he did that gave us the extra edge is sometimes he would lean over to the customer and, using a technique that we've already discussed, the whisper close, he'd say, look, if you'll go ahead and take advantage of this right now, why don't I get Wright to come over and autograph or personalize this for you? Now, when he first told me this, I was embarrassed. I've always felt that if people wanted you to autograph something, they'd ask you. However, I've realized recently that for people who have authored courses, that their customers appreciate having a personalized or autographed copy of this particular book or cassette program. And so there's usually a special table set up at the back of the room where people can get their materials endorsed for their friends and themselves. And of course, I'm more than happy to personalize something for people. If you're dealing with a group and you think that the personalized close will work for you, by all means try it. We should be in the business of serving other people, and we should feel good about what we're offering. We should feel good about the benefits. So if someone would like to have their items autographed or personalized, you bet. Go ahead and do it. Let's now take a moment and go over these past 3 closing techniques. Closing technique number 22 is the getting approval or the stepladder close. 23 is the invitational or let's give it a go close. And closing technique 24 is the personalized close. Closing technique 25 is the doorknob or the just one more thing close. One of my friends, Roger Dawson, who I traveled with throughout Australia recently, is a well-known negotiating expert. Roger has a strategy he likes to call his nibble technique, and it reminds me of the close we're going to be talking about next, which is the one more thing close. Now, when you're through with your sales and your negotiations and you've gotten the person to agree with what you're doing, a lot of times it's to your advantage to try one more thing. Let me give you an example of this. Most of us have gone into lending institutions at one time or another, and we've been turned down. We haven't gotten the results we've wanted. Now, the next time this happens to you, don't do what most people do. When they get turned down by a lending institution, they either get very upset and mad and threaten to leave and take their business somewhere else, or they get very dejected and they sulk and they just kind of walk out hunched over. The professional thing to do is to look the banker right in the eye and say, Mr. and Mrs. Banker, I appreciate the opportunity that we've had to work together today, and I look forward to working together in the future. And I want you to know that until that time comes, I'm going to be taking my various business accounts and moving them to your lending institution. I'm going to be referring you to all my friends and associates so they'll bring their business here as well. And then with a smile, you reach out, you shake their hand, you pick up the briefcase, and as you leave to go out the door, at the very last second, when your hand's on the doorknob, you turn and at the last moment you say, "Oh, excuse me, just one more thing." And then you go back and you sit down and you try this all over again. You see, when they think that you're leaving, when you've picked up your briefcase and you're about to take off, they think, well, it's all over and done with. And boy, weren't they a nice person when we turned them down. They didn't get mad, they didn't get upset. It's too bad I wasn't able to help them. And I've learned that people want to help you more after they just turned you down. That's why whenever you have the opportunity, try the just one more thing close. Closing technique number 26. The second most frequently used closing technique, according to a national survey, was the concession close. In this situation, all it takes to help the customer take action and make a buying decision is to include an extra incentive, some additional bonus offer that gives extra added value to what you're discussing. In the case of IBM equipment, I would offer customers free 90-day service, free customer support, free in-house training for their personnel that were going to use the equipment, and free follow-up training for a certain amount of time. Now, these concessions were offered free of charge to all customers, but by offering them towards the end of the presentation, these concessions gave much more credibility to the product I was offering. Another variation of this is the special terms close. And this is effective when the cost of the product or item being sold was more than the customer could afford to pay for in the first 30 days of ownership. As a result, I would ask them something like this: "Mr. Customer, my company is willing to set up an installment payment arrangement, such as individual payments over 36 months, if you would place your order today. And if we're able to put you on a longer term lease, like 12, 24, or 36 months, would you like to go ahead and take advantage now?" A lot of times this is all it would take. Say in addition to that, if we could offer you no interest and no payments for the first 90 days, would you prefer to get 2 or 3 of this particular product? Again, by combining the different closes and by using this special terms close, with that extra push, that extra emphasis is all you need to help your prospects make a buying decision. Again, another variation of this is something that is used by department stores and people in the mail order business, and this is the special offer close. Whenever large stores have to do their inventories or need to find out what's available, they might want to get rid of a certain product line or upgrade another one. And it's an excellent time for them to send out mailings telling people and advertising about this special sale. And what they're trying to do is make the public aware of what's being offered. And they tell the public the offer is only good for a few days because a certain line is being discontinued or upgraded. If you want to take advantage of these lower, one-time only prices, you need to do it right now. I'm sure we've all responded to advertisements like this, especially at the end of the sales year or at a pre-inventory sale. Closing technique 27. You can use the minor point technique when you have a customer who's about to make a very major decision in terms of dollars or length of time. And as a result of this major decision, they're so concerned about that particular aspect that you want to do whatever you can to get their minds off of the overall big picture. Now, you do this by bringing up a very minor and often insignificant point. And again, by using questions similar to the alternative close, you might begin closing by asking, which of these font styles would you like on your computer's printer? Would you prefer a descriptive one or one that is more common to the business that you're doing? You might ask, which of your people will be operating the computer? Can I meet with them so that we can set up a training procedure? Then as they respond and commit themselves to the minor points, the major issue resolves itself. Let's go back now and look at these last 3 closing techniques. Closing technique number 25 is the just one more thing close, sometimes known as the doorknob close. Closing technique 26 is the concession close and the variations of it that I gave you. And finally, closing technique 27 is the minor point close. In using the sales aid close, you want to take a very significant part of your presentation, something that would have a great impact on the majority of the audience, and present it after you're at least 75% or 3/4 of the way through your presentation. At the same time, keep your very best story for last. The rule for every salesperson to remember is to use their second best sales aid for the approach and their number one sales aid for the close. As an example of this, right at the end of my investment presentation, I show the audience a check that my wife and I received after refinancing one of our apartment buildings. Now, up to this point, the audience has seen some other checks in amounts like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, and these are checks that have come as the result of refinancing the equity that has been built up in some of our properties. And right at the end of my main presentation, I put up a check. I show them a copy of an actual check that we received back for $268,000, over $250,000 tax-free, tax-deferred dollars. And because it's so unexpected, there's kind of a shock in the audience. You can hear the gasp, and people remember that check. It stays in their mind. The sales aid close becomes even more powerful when you follow it up by asking just one more question, such as, what would you do if we could show you how to get a check like this? Closing technique 29. Many salespeople have said the summary close was most beneficial to their success. In the summary close, which is also known as the justification close, the salesperson towards the end of the talk or presentation lists all of the various benefits, both major and minor points that have been covered during the discussion. Then, one by one, they reinforce each benefit in the prospect's mind. And by using this final shotgun method approach on all the key areas, even if your customer's mind has been wandering, or if you've shown them so many things that they're incapable of remembering them all, the summary close gives them the final opportunity to realize, yes, this is something that we want for our company. Closing technique number 30. At IBM, the direct close was often known as the AFTO close, with the word AFTO being spelled out in capitalized letters. These initials, AFTO, A-F-T-O, stood for Ask for the Order. In the presentations that I give nationally and internationally, I like to ask my audiences to raise their left hand and then to reach over and touch their right ear. And as these groups of 1,000 and 2,000 people do this in unison, I say to them, isn't it amazing what people will do if you ask them in a nice way? Sometimes in sales you can do everything. You can handle the objections properly, you can give a great presentation, and yet your customer will still be wavering. They haven't made up their minds. So when you feel like you've done everything, please, before you leave, ask for the order. Now, it's very critical that after you've asked for the order, as it is with most of these other closes, that you want to be very quiet. In fact, you want to be completely silent. You don't want to say a word, because the person that speaks first usually loses. And if you're quiet, and if you remain silent, there are only one of two things that can usually happen. First, your customer will either go along with you and sign the order, or they'll express another reason for not buying. Either way, you've now isolated the objection, and you can take advantage of it from there by using one of the other closing techniques we've already talked about. Sitting there and being quiet, saying nothing, can be as difficult and nerve-wracking on you if you're an inexperienced salesperson as it can be for the customer. But please remember that there is no pressure that you will ever exert that will remotely approach the pressure of sitting there silently saying nothing. And sit there until they either make a buying decision or give you an objection so that you can continue your selling process. I'd like to read a poem that I received at the first IBM training school that I attended in Dallas, Texas. I would give the author credit, but I'm not really sure who wrote it, but the name of the poem is Ask for the Order. Ask for the order often. That's what you're here to do. Salespeople have learned no income is earned from a pleasant interview. Determined to get that order. Just wishing will draw a blank. Guts count a lot, for wishes are not negotiable at the bank. Prepare your prospects for orders. You didn't drop in as a treat. Assume you will get that order. Keep selling with tact and skill. Some people will sign on the dotted line when you take for granted they will. You may know the buying motives and you may approach like a dream. You may be good when the buyer's mood keeps putting you off the beam. But unless you have conquered closing, your future is all behind. Your fortune lies in the person who buys in orders filled out and signed. Let's take a moment now and cover the final three closing techniques. Closing technique 28 is the sales aid close. Number 29 is the summary close. And closing technique number 30 is the AFTO close. Ask for the order. Ladies and gentlemen, None of us are born salespeople, but every one of us can develop these closing skills. We can learn from our past experiences no matter what our background is. In fact, the benefits and rewards of knowing and understanding these closing strategies and techniques are fantastic. Keep in mind that each of these closing techniques in and of itself can make you a tremendous amount of money. The best way to approach this, however, is to review these as often as possible, to be familiar with not just one of these techniques, but with all 30. You will learn to apply them at different times and in different situations. And by being prepared, if you're ever thrown a last-minute objection by your customer, you'll have a different way of handling that and a different closing technique that you can present. In the sporting world, the true champions are the people who know how to finish and who are mentally tough until the end of their event. Salespeople should learn to be great finishers. When we learn to apply the proper closing techniques, we put ourselves in the position to be great finishers and high-income achievers. The story that comes to mind is of Jack Nicklaus, probably the greatest golfer who's ever lived, winner of more Grand Slam events than any other person. And Jack was in a slump, and he went to his mentor, the man who had initially taught him the game of golf. And this teaching pro observed that Jack was overcompensating his golfing grip, and that he was using much too much of his right hand. And simply by making this one small alteration, Jack Nicklaus's game came back into focus, and shortly thereafter he won at the age of 46 his 5th Masters Championship. It was a dramatic event for any of you that happened to witness those final holes as he charged, making birdie after birdie, winning what most people would have thought was impossible. But he was able to accomplish this because even being as good as he was willing to listen and to learn from others and to make improvements. Ladies and gentlemen, I challenge you to study and practice these high-income closing techniques. Learn how to apply them in your business and personal transactions. I promise you, as you master these skills, you'll see your income skyrocket and your quality of living improve. This is Wright Thurston. I look forward to hearing your success story in the near future.